All right, then. So we're bringing Mr. Ogbonna Okuko, who is a development economist. Good morning, and thank you for joining us today on the program. Well, having looked through the ministerial retreats and some of the figures that were highlighted there, comparing it with the figures that currently exist about the economy, well, maybe you just give us your perspective about how all of this scenario is playing out to you, being an economist.
It would be nice for us to, Chamberlain, to build a foundation in this conversation, starting from understanding that the strategic fundamentals required to build, public policy, there are steps that must be in existence. First of all, you have to look at what do you have? What are the things that you have? Do you have rules? And when those rules are there, do you have the right institutions? If the institutions are there, and we need to also understand that these institutions are basically teams of people who help deliver rules that are already made by legislation. Number three, you have to also look at things like critical mass of enlightened society or citizenship. Now, do we have well-educated people who will be able to even understand what you're saying on what the programs of government? And then the third thing is the authorizing sphere, which is leadership. Now, everybody, if we look at where the programs are designed from and the implementation of this program with the institutions that exist, so it's only critical, it's only important for there to be a time of review. There to be a time to do a count, look at where are we, what have we done over the years. Now I understand that things, maybe figures would change when it has to do with GDP, and then everybody's asking, okay, how does that translate to Naira and Kobo? Which is a German question. I understand when people ask those questions, but these are things that would take a while to translate into, what will affect our lives generally. So having looked at that, I think it's a good thing that we are reviewing ourselves, taking account into what jobs that we have been given as, the mandates given to each agency or parastatal or ministry. See, have you been able to meet some of the critical points that you're supposed to meet? So if those things are looked at, and then you begin to look at other ways to strategically meet up with those targets. So if these things are done, it will actually bring a better society, and then help us grow better.
So are you suggesting that we don't have a critical mass of persons who understand those policies and to execute those policies?
No, that's not where I'm coming. That's not where I'm coming from. I'm talking from the citizens, people who look at some of these policies, people who just sit back and say, "Oh, should we just sit down and talk and then not be able to do anything?" No, I'm looking at the citizens generally. We have over 200 million people who we have a job of making them understand there are processes, there are programs, and there are implementation strategies that must be used to make sure they also have a role to play. And don't also forget that if we have a wrong culture, if we have people who, part of the citizens are the people who form the institutions, because everybody says, okay, let's have a strong institution. How do you have a strong institution with a population of citizenry who also form part of those teams who are supposed to implement? If they have a wrong mindset, it becomes a big problem for you to even translate some of these programs and plans. So for me, there's a job to be done. There are things we need to do, and then we need to do them really quickly.
Well, given the scenario today, yes, the government had the retreats. They looked at where they are, where they ought to be, and how they should proceed from there. They reeled out interesting figures, as it were. But out there, it's a different scenario entirely. People feeling the pinch in terms of the downturn in the economy, which is affecting every sector. So naturally, people will ask is, look, do they actually get the feel of what's happening out there out there in the country compared to the figures they are reeling? Because many look at those figures and the reality, they can't reconcile them.
Now, you see, Chamberlain, let's look at Nigeria as a transaction, okay? Now, if you look at, there are components of programs implementations. There are different spheres of government, which there has to be a confluence, there has to be a deliberate attempt for those at the subnational and those, those working at the federal level to come together and begin to, turn out plans that can be implemented easily for people to begin to feel the effect of some of these programs. Now, I say this because, when it comes to industrialization, for example, everything must be domiciled in a state. Now, if you have a robust plan for industrialization or diversification at the federal level without a comprehensive plan adopted by those at the state level, it becomes like you're just wasting your energy. Why? Because every transaction is domiciled in a state. Now, if, for example, a man wants to build an ethanol plant, and then he can't situate that ethanol plant in the air. It has to be probably in a state. And now he goes to the state, and then he's finding it difficult to, get land. He's finding it difficult to get the licenses that that is required for him to set up his business. He's finding it difficult to navigate within the system generally. What do you expect? The person gets frustrated, and then it becomes a very difficult, task for him to actually go into that transaction. So these are the things we have to look at. So for us to have an industrialization plan, there has to be, we have to have, I come back to the same issue, we must have, a skilled workforce, people who understand what it takes to even support transactions. Two, you must have a strategic technology transfer plan, because most of these things, we can't do them on our own for now. We need to still get some of those transfer of technology coming from maybe foreign direct investment or coming from technology owners or producers from other climes. We need to have a market that will be able to absorb some of these particular things that we're going to be producing. We need to have a raw material supply strategy, which brings me to the things that has to do with agriculture, because agriculture, petrochemical plants, these are things that has to be functional. These are things that have to support the industrialization program. You need to have a robust financial engineering strategy. You have to have designed a plan where finances can actually get to MSMEs, get to businesses easily without any encumbrances. You need to also, be able to plan your transactions from A to Z. So these are the things, that we have to, there has to be a convergence. There has to be a confluence where major stakeholders, major players have to all come together, both at the federal level and at the state level, so that we can actually begin to work and then get the results that we are looking for.
I was trying to really decrypt what you meant when you said Nigeria, let's look at Nigeria as a transaction. I'm still trying to understand, maybe, in answering this next question, you might be able to do that. Because a number of people continue to point to Nigeria's potential. But then the structures, the systems don't seem to be going in the same direction. From the things that were said, yesterday at that retreat, a number of questions that so many people will be asking is the system itself strong enough to bear the potential that the country has if it would indeed explore all of itself? Because it will seem to many that, even from some of the issues that were raised yesterday by the top government officials, the potential is there, no doubt, but the system doesn't seem to be strong enough if Nigeria was to explore all of itself right now.
Okay, now, let's see it this way, yeah. The key thing, which is what I think, because, okay, these things that came out yesterday actually came out because we all sat down to have a conversation. Now, the second stage will now be, okay, what do we do with some of these conversations? Now, the leadership of the country will actually still, I expect the president at this point in time, looking at those issues that were raised and say, okay, this is a round peg in a square hole. So you have to go to this other area, or you have to exit the cabinet, or you have to leave this particular agency because you don't have the capacity to do that. So that's actually one of the things that I expect to happen, because reviews basically, when you look at some of these things, is basically for you to see where we have gone wrong, or what we're not doing well. And then you see that there are no two ways about it, whether we like it or not. If we have right people positioned in right places, it makes life a lot easier. But then let's not also forget, I keep mentioning this, we can have a very robust plan at the federal government, at the federal level. But without that merger, without that confluence with those at the sub-national, because of the way Nigeria is structured, it will be a bit difficult for us to actually achieve the milestones that we want to achieve. So I think beyond this, after this review, and then the plans that will come afterwards must have that fusion, must have that chain connect between the federal government and the state government, and then it has to go beyond political affiliations, so that we will know that we're trying to build a nation that we can actually live for our younger generation to take over.
But the question then is, what is missing? A number of things would seem like, look, every ministry, every department, every agency has its own unique vision, its own unique, ideology, its own unique goals. Customs wants to make money, immigration wants to make money. Some people are asking for a nexus. At that meeting yesterday, of course, you would also see that there have been calls so many times for collaboration of ministries, departments, and agencies. There were issues also raised concerning the fiscal policies versus monetary policies. So it would seem like there is an absence of a corporate direction to which the leadership is taking the country. Because if there isn't a rallying point or a rallying goal, everyone is going to be working at variance. So do you see that as a challenge? Like, okay, the ministries, departments, and agencies are not really able to work together or to collaborate because they really can't identify a particular thing that everyone is working towards? Or you think, okay, maybe it's okay the way it is, we can still achieve some growth or development?
Of course, there's always room for development or improvement, rather. See, in team building, which is also one of the things I expect to happen as far as this retreat is concerned, if I'm trying to achieve a mandate as a CEO of an agency of government, and if my work impedes another agency's work, we should come together and begin, talk it out, and then have, a structure where it becomes a win-win for everybody. Now, leadership, really, when you want to see, productivity is basically being able to solve complexities that exist within all different spheres of life. So leadership at this point in time, I think, will critically begin to look at some of these synergies that must happen. Talking about the fiscal and the monetary policy, and yes, I quite agree, because but it's just that when it comes to economic structures or trying to build an economy, yeah, the fiscal policy managers are the ones who actually implement more. Now it's beginning to look as if the monetary policy managers are not doing more. So I think some of the things that the central bank is doing is beyond their their pay grade. They should work in hand with the fiscal monetary managers, so that some of these things will leave them, because I don't even think they have the manpower to manage some of this. Yes, they are good ideas, the Anchor Borrowers program, the designs that they are coming up with, they are nice, but I mean, these are things you need to. You can't do MSME funding without having Sweden leading on it. You can't do all of that without having the Ministry of Trade and Investment lead on some of these things. So I think that there's room for some of these conversations to be placed on the table, and then I expect moving forward from now there will be a smoother ride.
Some decades ago, Nigeria used to be at par with India in terms of foreign direct investment. In 2020, Nigeria gets $2.4 billion in foreign direct investment, and India gets $64 billion. That's from those who are looking from the outside. Last time, the VP did say, owing to the economic sustainability plan, how they brought in the COVID funding and all those cash transfer programs, they've been able to create some 2 million odd jobs. But if you look through the figures with the MBS from Q4 2020, Nigeria's unemployment rate has risen to about 33% or thereabout. So you look at all of these figures in terms of government's plans and programs and the current stats and data out there. That's why I said, how do you reconcile them? Now, from your perspective and this retreat that government has had, from what you've seen, would you say that government is on the right track or getting policies right?
Okay, let me answer your question from trying to look at the investment promotion angle of it, because you talked about investment, attracting investment to India and then Nigeria. Now, investors are resource seeking. They look for resources. Investors are market seeking. They look for large market. And please, let's not misunderstand it. Population is not market, because you might have a large population with people with less disposable income to actually afford what you are making. So number four, investors are very interested in strategic assets. So if you have huge, lovely strategic assets, they are interested in coming into your country because of those things. But there is a great denominator in all I have mentioned. The fourth thing and the most important thing is efficiency in your system. We talked about your tax regime. We talked about how easy it is for people to get licenses, how, your registration, how to get things registered, how to actually maneuver within your system. I always say this everywhere. Investors are like, our investment is like water. It moves to areas of least resistance. Now, if peradventure you see that there are no legal bypass to some of the impediments that are structurally have held a lot of transactions down. Now, it becomes a bit difficult for you to get some of those investments to come. Yes, of course, we have potentials. Yes, of course, there are things this is an untapped nation. We've not even started talking about solid minerals in Nigeria. We've not even gone anywhere when it comes to logistics. We're just building railways at this point in time in our nation. These are things that will still be concessioned in future. And these are things which is still part of the strategic assets I'm talking about. Now, if looking at all of this, and then a nation is being, and we're looking at, and we're not able to see how to manage some of these, variables that affect or impede development. Now, it gives us room for us to say, okay, let's improve on things. Let's begin to work hand in hand with those, like I keep saying, those are the subnationals. There are things that are they're legally there that becomes a problem for you. Let me give you a very simple example, Chamberlain. If you're an investor now, you want to do power in Nigeria, do you know you have to deal with at least 7 different agencies of government? Starting from, you have to go to NERC, from NERC, for you to get your power generation license. Before you get that power generation license, you have to go to TCN because they need to see your power evacuation corridor. So TCN has to do all of that. You must go to Ministry of Environment to get your EIA done. You must go to, because if it's gas fired power generation plant, you have to go to NNPC.
Just winding down on that, we just need a clear feedback. It's just a clear feedback to the authorities who need to know the real figures of what's going on out there. That's why I ask, what will be your feedback be to them? Are they getting it right?
Yeah, my feedback to them is to streamline. We need to work towards streamlining some of these processes. And these are things, and some of them,
so do we need to streamline if we're getting it right?
Assembly, leadership are represented in these meetings. So they know that there are things that actually become an impediment in trying to, drive investment or, make businesses work as, in Nigeria, so that they begin to make some of those changes that are required.
Okay, even though I still didn't get what the feedback is actually. Well, thank you for coming on, Mr. Gbona Akuku, development economist.